Hey, welcome back to Outbuilding. This video is about a giant rolling gate project. It's this fence that is extended around the perimeter of our yard. There's a video that precedes this. I'll put up the link to it here. That shows the basic setup of how I build that fence because I did this video in two parts. This second part is focused primarily on the rolling gate, which is 23 feet long and 7 feet tall. It rolls back so that we have access to an alley, and then rolls back and then closes off to secure the alley or the area here from deer, which come in and eat all of our small trees in our garden. So without any other explanation, let's get started with the rolling gate fence project. All right, so here are the challenges with this fence. There's a flat area here. We put this in super level, and so we can put a track on that, and the leading edge of the rolling gate can come across and follow that. On the very end there, I've got a post that I'm calling the receiver, and it's got a little beveled slot that can accept sort of a tongue to go in there and key that, and that's actually where you would lock it as well. So that end will be pretty secure. It'll run on a track here, and then I'm gonna have a permanent fence starting at this wall going out and over and up. And the challenge is going to be that you can see the dirt lifts and climbs there, so the fence can't just roll straight back on a track all the way back. It's going to have to lift and slide up a little bit. So I'll have one track on the ground here, and it'll come back to about here. And then starting on the fence, I'll have a track that's raised and attached to the fence, and it'll sit up on top of the fence or on the side of the fence, and it'll go up there. And then on the top of these, I'm gonna have a set of rollers on the top of this fence. I'm gonna have a hoop over here with rollers in it that'll captivate the top of the fence so that the fence can't tip front to back. This is set up so that we could eventually put in like a garage closer, like an automated closer there. And so the plumbing, I've got plumbing back to the house for power, data, and then a little stub going across here if I need to do an optical eye, because you need to have an optical eye to manage that. So those are going to be the challenges. So I'll go get in and draw, and I'll see I can use this sort of standard fence like I did in the other areas, lagged into this wall going down. There's only going to be 3 unique posts here. There's going to be one on the end that kind of has that roller set and everything for the rolling gate. There's going to be one at each of the places that the wall is stepped, so it's got to change in elevation. So there'll be a fence with tabs that are a little bit offset, and it'll be taller. And then there'll be one in the corner down there where I've got a corner, and I'll want to brace that so that that's sturdy in both directions in the corner. The rest of it's going to be very, very much like the fence I've done in the other parts of the yard, and it'll close. And I want this rolling gate to look a lot like the fence, but be functional and be able to roll back and tuck out of the way so we can get vehicles in and out, and then be able to roll back. And when it's closed, I'd like it to look fairly uniform, as though it's just part of the fencing. So that's the design challenge. I'll get in and draw this up and measure it out carefully. And then I'm also gonna try to track down the parts for this so that the rollers and the wheels and things which have dimensions I can accommodate in that design. Okay, I've learned not to trust the dimensions that are provided on websites. So we got the rollers in. These are the rollers. They're gonna sit up on the top of the gate and trap it from falling side to side. They will sit inside of a hoop that is going to actually kind of stiffen up that peninsula or end of the fence that's hanging out there at the gate. For the track on the ground, I'm going to use 1-inch angle that I'll put some tabs on and screw down into the concrete. It'll be stainless. This is just steel, but I can try it with the track here. And then I've got these fancy hardened wheels that will ride on that track on the ground, and this is one of the dimensions I really wanted to check because it wasn't really available on the website, but what is the center of the axle height off the surface of where this track is mounted? In this case, it'll be the concrete outside. So I can measure that out and verify that. And then the portion of the track, there's 2 tracks. There's one on the ground and the other one up inside the fence that kind of pulls it up and out of the way. That one I'm going to make out of 1x1 square tubing that I'll turn on its side, so it'll be kind of at a 45-degree angle. And it'll form a track very much like the one on the ground. And I can check that dimension in there and make sure that that's going to work well. So got the 3 points of contact that the gate will hold on to. There's the one along the ground that leads it all the way out to the sort of receiver on the far side. There's the rollers up on top that keep the fence from tipping in and out, or the gate rather from tipping in and out. And then I've got the track that's inside, that's mounted to the fence that takes it up over the dirt when you retract the fence out of the gate out of the way. Okay, so the first thing I did was to go ahead and model the existing walls, the concrete walls. So I measured them out carefully. I got both the neighboring wall over here, the sort of skirt that I'd put in with the receiving post, and then the outer walls of the fence area. This shows the step and the altitudes and everything. And then I measured those carefully, and then I figured out where I can put the bottom track and the track along the fence and the rollers up on top here. And I knew I had to have some space for the gate. And so the gate is then I modeled that rolling on the track, and I learned, for instance, that I need to kind of offset the very tip of this, because as it tilts back, that thing would drag on the ground. It would sort of poke its nose into the ground. So I was able to model that and see that when it comes back out, it sits flat, and came up with a design that I liked that worked and elevated. I still don't know if that's going to return itself to closed automatically because of the gravity, or whether it's going to be hard to push up. That'll bear out once I get it all built. But started with CAD model here, and then I switched over to drawings and was able to pull off measurements, including like for this ramped track. I needed to put in different dimensions at each post, and the posts are different widths, and so I let the CAD system kind of help me do that. Figured all that out so that when I started building the metal, I knew it would fit as, and I kind of went back and forth as I was building. I would go back in and readjust some of this stuff. Anyway, that's how I set stuff up so that I had a solid design and something I could work from. All right, so with my plan sheet, I went ahead and cut out all the metal pieces, got them cleaned up and sort of ground off, ready to weld. So I'll work on that. I'm just going to start by working on that corner piece or the end piece that's basically where the fence ends and the gate rolls through it. And that's going to take a fair amount of stress because the whole gate's going to depend on that thing for rigidity as well as the fence. So I'll kind of build up that corner, get that locked in and bolt it on, and then I can start infilling the panels. Okay, getting it back to things today. Got the first post. This is the one that the gate's going to roll through. Got it kind of roughed out, and it's got a little space because the gates, or the rolling gate's going to have a truss on it, and so that truss, you'll see, will stick out a little bit. So I made some space for that, and then I've got like my sort of fake gate here that can roll through, and I took off there was a metal bracket on these rollers that I took off because it's, for one thing, it's zinc, and that's kind of hard to weld and not be breathing noxious fumes, but also it wasn't quite the right spacing. So I created these little plates and put some washers in there, and I'm going to tack these on both sides in the right. I'm going to measure it out and get the right spot, and then those rollers will create sort of a fairly tight space for the gate to roll through and register the top part of the gate so the gate can't tip over. If you watch the first video on the fences, you'll see that the fence is basically made up of posts, and then there's panels that go in between them. And the posts have different ways to attach, and because they're on walls or in concrete or whatever. And then the panels are pretty similar in between. And the panels captivate. There's a kind of a cross piece of angle iron that goes across the posts and picks up either the wire mesh, the hog fencing, or there's bolsters that go onto these tabs that hold on the cedar. So this is the most complicated one is probably this end one, because the gate's going to slip through it. It's got to stabilize the whole end of a fence that's way out on a 20-foot long run of fence with no other support. So it's got this back brace and this hoop, and it's got the little tabs in it here for their rollers to captivate the gate going through, and it has the tabs going across. And then this is the first of what will be many intermediate posts that are very similar. I'm gonna weld the cross pieces top and bottom to these and make this into one piece, mostly so that that's stable at the very end. I'll put a diagonal in there to really lock it up. And then I can build a whole bunch of these interior ones to infill for the rest of the fencing, and it'll kind of base itself on that. I also need to put a little mount on these for the track that the gate's gonna roll on, because the gate's not gonna touch the ground as it comes up against the fence. So I'll put these together kind of into a bigger assembly and bolt that one in on the end, and that'll be sort of the end of the peninsula where the fence is and the gate comes out of it. And then the rest of it will be pretty repetitive. So this is one of the sort of custom pieces for this fence, and then the rest will be these. All right, well, I'll do a little update here. I've spent the last few days, I've been traveling and busy, so I haven't been videotaping as much of what I've been working on, but a lot of it is just redundant. I'm building a whole bunch of the posts that become the fence, and then I'll go ahead and put them all up at once. So I'll kind of do a quick walkthrough of some of the progress. There's the post with the hoop in it that the gate will roll through. That's all done and put together in one piece. And I got a whole bunch of the bases that will lag into it built and ready to go. I spent a lot of time on the milling machine and ran through and built a whole bunch of these little plates and pieces that'll get gobbled up once I start putting the fences in, or the fence panels in. And then I went ahead and salvaged all the tube I had and made up the posts. And I've been putting together intermediate posts with the tabs on them and everything. So those are all machined and getting welded on. I need to make quite a few of those to build the fence all the way around, and then I'll have the track that the rolling gate rolls on hang on those. So I'll get these put together, put that track on, and then start bolting them in. Okay, after a whole bunch of machining and welding, I got the first part here. This is all one piece, and this is all put together. It'll accept the gate rolling through here. The rollers sit up in here. It's offset from the end of the wall so that I could drill in and lag that, and it's got little hangers on it for the track that will form the rolling gate. And I just have this mesh panel set in for now. So now I need to stack down the rest of the posts, and the way I'm going to do that is, like, here's the next post, and it's got the ascending part of the track hanger there, and this is the top piece. So what I'll do is I'll go down and I'll measure out and set this piece up and mark it, and then I can make sure that I put the post in completely plumb and level, lag it into the bottom, and then fill it in with the mesh, and then just keep working my way down. So I've got a bunch of these posts. One of them will be a transition to go up that step, and it's just the same process over and over again. So a lot of rinse, lather, and repeat. least keep repeating. I've got 4 panels in now, and the 5th one has this jogged post, so the post is taller and it comes in at one level and leaves a little bit higher to accommodate the step in the concrete. But it's going together pretty well. I'll have one more to do that has the track, so there's the little outrigger for the track that will carry the rolling gate, and then after that I will just have regular posts, and the corner one will be a little bit unique too. All right, I got a really nice day to work today, and I'm kind of closing in on the corner. The corner is a weird piece, so it only have one corner, and so I hadn't really thought this through, but had to kind of make tabs that go in 2 directions, and then the tabs going out, and then on the end I used a piece of angle, kind of built a little contraption on the bottom to hold that thing so that it's sitting over the corner of the wall, and the wall was a little bit banged up, so I had to kind of take a chisel and move a little bit of the aggregate where the forms had sort of left some marks, but I think I got it cleaned up. All right, we got a beautiful day today. It's finally, weather's starting to break. I actually went and cut down a shirt and made it into a short sleeve shirt today to celebrate the weather change. So I got the metal done yesterday across the back here, and I'm gonna start working on the wood. It's good timing because the little trees here, the little fruit trees we have, are starting to bud out, and that's when the deer will start to come in and eat them. And so hopefully we can get this filled in today, and then I can start working on the rolling gate and get the area closed off. And then lastly, I can go work on the back panel here, which is captivated by the other fence and the neighboring yard. I'm going to start by I've got the scrap wood that's going to be in the way later, and I'm going to use that scrap wood to build just a little working deck so that I can cut standing up and not kneel down and get up and down a million times today. So I'll just hack together a little workbench that I'll leave out here while I'm doing these things, and then I can take that all off to get chipped up later. All right, well, this was a complete hack, but it's going to be super useful. It took about 30 minutes to put together, so I've got everything set up. I'm going to grab some lunch and come out and start going through this rinse, lather, and repeat steps for this fence. And if you watched the previous video, you saw how there's all the steps that go through to build the little bolsters for the fence and then cut down the fence panel. So I'm not going to go through that in this video. It's a new day, glorious day for working outside. One of our first really truly warm days of spring coming. And I got pretty far yesterday. I got the wood all up and put in place. Took me a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but that all went in really well. So now I'm just going to put up the cedar siding. That'll go really fast. It's kind of a good candidate for a time lapse. All right, we got another great day to work with. So far, our little tree has not been nibbled on by the deer, so the race is on. Hopefully I get it done before they get here. Today, I'm gonna work on the track that goes down on the entry here, and it's gonna come over and end up in this post that I cemented in when I put in the little skirt here. I'll get that really straight and lined up so that it rolls down the backside of the fence there. I went and got materials for the rolling gate part yesterday, and it did occur to me that they're pretty heavy when I was loading everything in collectively. That's quite a bit of weight. It's probably gonna be 300-400 pounds. So I'm gonna have to come up with some sort of a weird contraption to be able to bring it back and forth from the shop to here. I'll probably have to do that 3 times. I think I can build just the outer box frame and bring it and sort of make sure that everything's sort of working and get that frame to go back and forth, and then I'll infill the frame and probably do a couple other things because I'll want it to land right inside this post, there's sort of a receiving spot, and that'll kind of key it in when it's closed. And it's got to fit in the rollers. And the only piece of material I couldn't get yesterday was the track that will sit up in the fence that we've already put in. And so that's coming shortly in the next day or two. And I can get that, I can get the track on the ground here started, the upper track there, I'll get next week, and I can get the frame built up so that I can start sliding that in and getting that put together. All right, when I set this post in concrete, I did the best I could to measure it, but putting it concrete and doing it a year ago is sort of, you know, not going to necessarily give perfect results. So I've got a string out here that is lined up. If you look down the string, it's lined up directly down the center of the tracks on the fence. And it's lining up pretty well, and it measures out. So I can transfer that down onto the concrete with a mark and figure out where my track's gonna go. The upper track, which is what the string is tied up to, is not the same as the lower track. They're offset a little bit, but they're parallel to one another. So as long as I get this line straight all the way back to the post, then I can offset that lower track and drop a chalk line down and get it ready to go. And then when I build the sort of truss on the fence, I can make it wide enough to make sure that it slots right into that receiver. On the very end of this post is a receiver spot that should hopefully capture the fence when it comes in and parks. All right, for this track, I machined up a bunch of these tabs, and then I put a little bevel on the end of the angle that's going to form the track on the bottom, and then welded those tabs, and you can see I welded them down all along the track. So now I can go place that in the concrete and screw it in. All right, so we got one of the, well, actually sort of two of the three things that are going to hold the rolling gate. So we got the track on the bottom now put in place, and that worked out well yesterday. Got that all screwed down, and it's nice and tight. We'll have the rollers up here that'll hold the top of the fence, so that kind of gets the top and the bottom. And then when it retracts back, this track runs out. So then we'll have a track along the fence that picks up the third piece of it. And the way that track is set up is it's flat. In the first two breaks here, it's flat, and that's so that it's really easy to move the door back and forth just for enough to get a person to pass through, because we'll want to be able to walk in and out of here easily. And then it's going to climb a little bit to clear the ground as the ground ascends here, and then you'll have to push the fence up a little bit, and then the fence is going to want to roll back. So the trick now is I need to take the stainless steel tubing that I've got that's going to form this upper track and sit in the fence that's here. And I need to put a little bend in it because I want to go flat for a little bit and then kick it up. And that's not too bad, but it's square tubing and it's going to want to sit like this. It's pretty easy to bend it that way, but I'm going to actually want to hold it on end because the wheels roll on the top of that corner. And so I need to build some sort of little wedge blocks to hold that thing. And then I need something heavy like a Jeep that I'll probably use to kind of push down on it and bend, create that bend. I could weld an angle in there, but the fence is going to kind of bump on that. So I want to try to make a smoother curve. So I'm going to build a little saddle, like a cradle, if you will, that will hold that piece of railing or that tubing. And then I'm going to set the wheel of the Jeep down in there and see if I can't get it to bend. And I'll kind of work my way up in sizes until I get the right amount of bend in there. And then I can weld together the rest of the fence. So I'll have a nice long track with a smooth transition in it from the flat here to the upper part. At least that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. I'm making good progress here. The first part here, I've got the track set in its slot, and it goes up to about where I've marked it, and I've got a bend, and I'm pretty close. I probably do one more pass. Each time I set the Jeep down on it, I'm able to move it a little bit, and I've got the other piece, so really close to getting in. So I'll do one more little bend, and then the rest of that goes up and out. So when I back off here, you can see that the gate sort of climbs to clear the dirt. All right, it took a couple more times than I thought, but I was able to get it. The gap is now almost perfect, so I'll weld that up and then go ahead and put this in, and then I can cut off the far end. Definitely not probably typical to use a Jeep to bend something, but it worked. All right, with the two tracks in place out there and the rollers up on top, now I need to kind of build the little pieces that will let the fence itself, the gate itself, roll on those tracks. So one of the tracks sits right underneath right in the center line of the fence, and so that'll be built into the bottom rail. And then the one that's the back side of the rolling gate, which rolls up onto the fence on the upper track, is going to have to be offset. And so I've got, like, if this is the post for the fence, I've built this little Franken bracket that'll sit out and kind of outrigger off the side and support the wheel just to the outside of it, and the wheel will slip into that and then track. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one of the end posts, the terminal post of the rolling gate, and I'll just tack this little bracket on and go out to the fence, and I can walk it up and down on the rail and make sure that I've not got any interferences. I know the bolt head, it's a pretty good sized bolt that holds the wheel on. That's going to protrude a little bit, and I didn't account for that in my CAD model. And so I may have to take the grinder out and kind of clean up a little bits up along the way on the fence, but I'm going to do that now with the post when I don't have it all built into a giant 23-foot long gate. So here's that thing. I just did a couple little tacks to hold it on, bolted it in, and I can head out. It sits right next to the side of the post, and I can go give it a try. On the first one, there's a little bit of a collision. Just need to trim those brackets down there. That's not doing anything structural, so I can just take a little bit off of those, and then I'll work my way up and make sure I'm not hitting anything else as I go up. It rolls really well though. So a couple of these are really close with the bolt head comes through and just about brushes into it. So I just went ahead and marked these off where the bolt head's coming through, because this thing sits just a little proud of the metal here. And I'm just chiseling these off to make sure I've got enough space when I get that big fence rolling gate out here. All right, one more check to do here is I went ahead and just used some clamps and set this end post of the rolling gate in place, and I can look and see what the final clearance measurement is. And I want that, I've got another 1.5 inches for the bottom rail that's going to go across, and it's actually, it's really close right now. I've only got 3/16 of an inch clearance from the post, so I'm going to move this thing up, try to give myself a little bit more like 1/2 inch, so I'll move it up about 5/16. So I pulled this thing off, retacked it a little bit lower, and now I've got exactly 2 inches, which is great because I'm going to have it 1.5 inches for the bottom rail that'll sit underneath there, and that means I've got 1/2 inch of clearance, which isn't a lot, but it should be fine. I should be able to keep this truss pretty straight. All right, it's come to this. I've got two 23-foot long pieces. One of them is the last wheeled part. I just have this tacked together here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's tough to show you. I'll pull it out and drop it in the track and see that it's working. But it's inevitable. I have to start putting all this stuff together into one giant piece that's going to be really hard to move around. So I've got the four edges of the frame for the fence or the gate, and I need to start putting that together. I'll put it into just the 4 pieces. It'll be kind of a flopsy noodle, but I can get it out there and just make sure that it's going to clear and that it goes back and forth properly, and then I can start infilling it. It's going to get harder and harder to move. It probably is going to weigh a couple 100 pounds just with the 2 pieces, or with the 4 pieces, and then it'll go up from there as I add the things to it. The wheels are rated for it, so that's not a concern. It's just like this old man's going to have to move it around. So anyway, I will go ahead and move this out and verify that. If that works, I'll burn in those welds and then start putting together. I'm gonna have to build some sort of deck in here to work on out of some old timbers, just so that I can get it flat and then weld it in place, because it's hard to weld on the ground with a foot pedal. So I've got the 4 pieces for the rolling gate all put together, and I was just about to put them together. I went out and took the bottom piece with the wheel on it out to test on the lower rail. It works fine, but I realized it's kind of a noodle. It's 23 feet long, it's big, and I got all these pieces loaded in here, and I realized when I start putting that together, for one thing, it's gonna be really challenging to move around, especially by myself, and it's gonna be flopsy until I get it all put together and structurally braced up. And then also, it barely fits in here. It fits in the garage. The garage is like 24 feet and it's 23.6 or something. So once I get it started, I can't really put the sailboat back and kind of clean up at the end of the day. And so I actually diverted a little bit, and I went ahead and machined all the parts, all these little pieces I need to put all the infill panels in the rolling gate when I get it done. And I'm gonna go ahead and put all those tabs on all the different pieces before I assemble it finally, just so that when I go to assemble it, I can basically do that in one pass, move it out once, and then finish up out there by putting in the infill panels and stuff. But it's just gonna be too hard to move back and forth. I had kind of wanted to be able to take it out and measure it and bring it back, but I think this will work better. It'll certainly be easier, and I can kind of do it in one pass. I am gonna do one more thing with the pieces before I start assembling stuff. So I've got the longest rail, the top rail, and I've got all the little hooks that the hog fencing is going to hang from. I'll go ahead and populate all those on there and measure out because that'll help me. I got it all laid out here, and I can measure out where all the posts are going to go in the fence or the rolling gate. And then I have an idea. I'm going to use another project that's on this channel. If you've subscribed or if you've seen it, it's the trailer I built walls for. And I can use those trailer walls kind of as a set of sawhorses, and it's a mobile set of sawhorses. And so I'll pull the trailer in here, put the walls on it as soon as the sailboat's out, and then I'll build the rolling gate on top of that, and then that'll be easier for me to kind of schlep it down to where it needs to go when I go to put it in, because it's probably going to weigh 300-400 pounds when I'm done, and I can kind of move that around and wrestle it myself as long as I've got like the trailer to work from. So I think this will work pretty well. I had to add little extensions to the trailer here to get it to fit, but I'll be able to roll it back and forth and work with the welder under various parts of it and put it together piece by piece flat, and then I can use the crane to flip it over and weld up the other side of it. But now I'm just trying to try to keep it all straight and get it all tacked together and keep putting the pieces together. All right, so I haven't exactly painted myself into a corner. I may have welded myself into a corner, but got all the frame put together yesterday, sort of cleaned up, and it does fit on the trailer well. It's pretty easy to move around on the trailer, which is nice. Challenge is that it fits on the side up near the garage door here. I've got about 3 inches of room, and on the side down by the fencing, I've got less than that. So I don't have a ton of space to work with. I want to flip it over now so I can weld the other side of things, but I'm going to hit the garage door overhead here. So I think what I'm going to do, which should work pretty well, is just I can pull these yellow fences can come out of stake pockets. So I'll pull those out, and I can sort of inch things over this way, and that'll get me underneath the crane. And then I've got clearance to fit. I can stand it up on end and get some welds done that need to be done on end. And then I can flip it over pretty easily just using the crane to kind of hold it up. And that'll make it easier for me to, as one person, move it around. This will be pretty easy to, well, won't be easy, but it'll help to get it out to the final resting place. But I'll get the welds on the other side done, and then I can get it really straight before I put the cross bracing in to hold it straight and kind of create a truss. And then I've got a truss, or like a strong back on the side that'll act as kind of the handle for rolling it, but also act as a ladder truss. So I can start putting those things together with a little bit of, I've got it unfortunately behind the curtain here, which is primarily to prevent dust, but it also hides all the brain damage I've got back there. So I got to go move all that stuff so that I've got space to work. So I will perhaps do a little time lapse here and get all that stuff tidied up, and then start flipping this thing over and weld it. All right, I got this thing slid over. I don't know if it showed up on time lapse, but it would have made for a pretty good outtake when I was sitting on the trailer here and it was rolling off into the garage door and I couldn't stop it because I was riding on it. Anyway, got this position. I got a couple blocks on the end there that are on the concrete. This has got little pins on the end, just some screws just so that it won't slide off as I lift it up. And so I've got it roped up in the middle. It should be pretty balanced. I'll lift it up, and all I'm gonna do is stand it up and then kick the bottom underneath it and drop it back down, hopefully flip it upside down. So I can weld up the other side of it, and then I'll kind of go back and forth. I think I can keep it stood straight up for some other welds I need to do later as well. So see how this goes. What could possibly go wrong? Seemed to work pretty well for the first time. I think I can make it a little tighter up there and prepare those chains so they don't get tangled up on top. So that worked pretty well. I was able to get the top of this all welded up. So this thing's pretty stable now. I just see I missed a weld, so I'll get that before I do the next thing. But I'm gonna, now that I've got it welded up, I wanna stand it up on end, and I wanna get it all on the floor, because I'm gonna put these little cross braces in there, these diagonals that are gonna lock it up. So there's really three things I need to do remaining before it's done. I need to put the things that will bolt in. They'll hold both the hog fencing, and they'll also form part of a triangle. And that triangle will be the second thing I need to do, which is the diagonal that cuts across. And that'll make the whole thing really stable so it won't droop in the middle, because right now it's kind of flopsy, it's a noodle, and when I put those diagonals in, it's gonna lock it up. And then the third thing to do is to build the truss across the back, which will be kind of the handle, and also keep the whole thing from wiggling in the other dimension. Those things are all going to be easier done with it standing up on end in its kind of final orientation. And when I've got it up on end, then I can go and I can get these welds done on the bottom where I've missed or haven't completed those yet. And so I'll finish up that weld I missed. Then I'm going to use, I've got a little pulley system for the top of our Jeep that I can take off the top of the Jeep with. I'll use that on one end, and I'll use the crane on the other end, and I'll basically hang the whole thing in here so I can scoot the trailer out from underneath it. get the table saw out of here, and then I'll set it down and build some little cross braces to hold it up, and so that I can do all that other work with it sort of standing in the shop, and it'll still barely clear so I can close the door at night when I'm not working on it. But that's the next step in this sort of house of cards. It's actually pretty useful to have these cranes and be able to work in here, but this is about the limit of what I could work on just because of the size. As you saw when I lifted it up, it hits the top of the crane pulley. Okay, so I took some just scrap wood and I made these little triangles and braced this thing up so that it's flat. Well, actually, so it's just completely vertical. So these are plumb now on both ends. I did that on both ends, and that'll just help because the ropes are still going to support it, but I wanted to keep it really rigid. It's pinned at the bottom. I can slide these things around as I work, but I want to keep it really straight so that when I start putting my triangles in, I'm locking it down in a straight fashion. So the next thing I'll do is I'll probably take the laser and I'll make sure that the bottom rail is flat, and I'll shim up the bottom as much as I need to get it dead flat before I start putting in triangles. Then I can just, because then it'll be true in both dimensions, flat and straight up and down, and then I can go ahead and weld those in, and that should lock that stuff up so that it holds that way. All right, got a nice new day to work. I left yesterday with these cross braces, these sort of triangles in here to get this thing plumbed straight up and down. So it's completely straight up and down now. Because it's 23 feet long, it's got a little bit of wiggle to it as it goes down that 23 feet. And so I've got a cheap little laser level. This was like a $30 thing. It's got a magnet on the bottom, and I shimmed it with some paper so that it's a 1/2 inch off the top of the rail here of the rolling gate and a 1/2 inch off the far end where I've got a little block set out there. And now I can go in intermediate steps and measure and shim the bottom of the gate. I know that the dimension of all the uprights is exactly the same. So I'll shim the bottom up to get it level, and I'll probably even put a little bit of bias into it so that it can droop a tiny bit once I put the cross bracing in. But once I get this shimmed out, it's droopy enough with the weight to hold itself in place. Then I can go ahead and weld in those cross braces. So I'm finding this a little bit of a yoga experiment to get in here and reach everything so that I can actually weld this off-angle stuff, but it's good because you don't always have a perfect position to weld. So I'm figuring out how to do it and working my way through from one side to the other. All right, with the diagonals all in and the bottom, all the bottom welds are all done and the diagonals are all in and welded up. So now I'm just going through and adding this mid rail. The mid rail is going to capture it'll pick up the hog fencing and then also act as a brace. It'll create the rest of that triangle to make those things super stable. All right, so I have all my cross pieces in, and now I'm putting this little truss on here, and this will act as a handle so you can roll the gate back and forth, but it also will help kind of, I've got a string tied up here, and I'm gonna measure at each point before I weld and torque the frame so that I get the frame straight, and then this little truss box will kind of help. It's not gonna be huge, but it'll help it from, that's not gonna want to rack, and it's gonna help it keep flat and straight. So I'll true it. I've got it stood off 3/8 of an inch with a piece of metal on each end, the string, and I'll true it up as I work my way down, weld, and then move to the next one and weld and straighten it up. All right, so we got another beautiful day, finally getting some spring weather, and yesterday I got all the welds, pretty much everything put in place. So this is all effectively put together. I just need to flip it upside down and pick up a few of the welds that I couldn't reach. They're upside down, and it'd be tough to reach welding in the position they're in. And I think that'll be easier now because I've got this structure in the middle, and so I can lift it up on the crane and rope by this middle piece and then spin it like a rotisserie, and I think it'll be way easier for me to flip over and then flip back when I'm done. I do have one more piece to put on. There's a receiver that when the gate closes it's going to drop into, and I need to build the little receiver piece here, but I need to measure that out, and I'll do that before I wheel it out. I think I'm going to use one of these braces beefed up a little bit with some wheels so I can kind of wheelbarrow the whole thing out there as opposed to using the trailer. I think that'll just be easier because it'll be upright. And if I take all the boltable parts out, I think it'll be relatively lightweight with respect to moving it, and then I can put it all together out there. So the only bummer is that when I use my welding hood and it's bright sun out there, the hood blacks out. I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm gonna have to close the door. I'll zoom through these welds and get them done, and then open the door back up and enjoy the day. I want to add one thing here. So far, this seems to have gone pretty well. It's really, really straight, and it seems to be pretty rigid with these cross pieces in and these triangles. So I'm hoping that that stays. I'm a little apprehensive. I'm concerned because I've only allowed myself a ½ inch of droop. If it droops more than a ½ inch, it's going to start hitting the track in the middle if the belly of it sits low. The fix for that will be to move the holes down, essentially give it a suspension lift, because I've got only 2 wheels that basically dictate how high it goes. But I've set those up to be a ½ inch. So it's an open question and kind of going to be fun to see how well it holds up, both with when I first put it in, but when I put all the other pieces in. But I think I can, in the field out there, I can, if I have to, I can jack it up and re-drill holes. So it'll be fun to see. Part of the adventure. Okay, so I got all the topside welds put together and I'm spinning it back to being upright, but because it was upside down, but I'm gonna pick up one set of welds that I missed on the way while I've got it flat here. Then I'll flip it back up and close it out with the little piece that's gonna drop into the receiver, and then the magic of trying to cart it out to the actual destination spot comes. All right, the moment of truth. I've got this all finished up. I've got the little receiver part that's gonna act as sort of like the lock, but also kind of register that far end. I gotta put the one more wheel. I've got the one wheel on the bottom here. I'll put the wheel on the back side. And then I built up this little Rube Goldberg contraption with the braces I had. So I threw some wheels underneath there. I think I'm gonna just try to wheelbarrow it out there, just kind of with a long wheelbarrow. See how this works. I also took all the intermediate spanners across that are bolted in. I took those out just to lighten it up. So it's not too heavy right now. I'll put out, most of the weight will be up on the front here, and I'll carry it from the back and see if I can't wheel it out and get it into position and get it jogged onto the gate. lines up pretty well. We got the receiver dropping in, and I've got a bump stop that I'll add, and then there's a little place where I can lock the gate, and then if I push it back, it moves pretty nice, and it hasn't drooped. It's not actually drooping even with those intermediate pieces in there, so it's holding up pretty well. And it'll go, and I've got a stop for it here that I need to add so that it doesn't roll off the top of the rollers. But it's pretty nice, and the gravity it closes just because of the hill on its own. All right, so after kind of cleaning up from yesterday's big effort of bringing the rolling gate out, I went ahead and got some more material, and so I'm going to put the hog fencing in. I had a little bit more, and I needed to get some. So I'll just cut this. I've already got I just need to weld on the last two little hooks and bolt them in. So I'll infill those, and then tomorrow I'll probably start going through and finish up the wood on the bottom as well, because I got the material for that. Today I am going to go ahead and do the wood part, which goes pretty quickly. I've got the sort of 3 steps that I've shown in other videos where I go through and run through a bunch of jigs and kind of set up the little bolsters that go on the sides of the fence. And then the cedar will go in on top of that. There's one additional step with this rolling gate, because the rolling gate has diagonals that get in the way of those bolsters. And so I'll show you, I'm just doing I've got yet one more jig built, and I just mark those up individually, run them through the jig and make them fit. Yesterday, I brought the welder out and patched up a couple things that I needed to do. The rolling gate where it meets the receiver was just off by a little bit. It's exactly an inch off, so I don't know if I accounted for an inch twice or just made a mistake, but cut that off and re-welded it on, so now that's matching just right. And I've got a little rubber bump stop that's from a suspension system that is a perfect thing to sort of hit that receiver and then stop with a little bit of cushion. And then I also put in some sleeved holes on the other side so that when the gate's all the way open, I can put a little kick stop, like a kickstand that kind of holds the fence up on the hill when it's open, so that you can just pop that out and let it roll back. So I'll go to those later, but I went ahead while I had the welder out and set that stuff up. So now I'll show you how I hook these up. I've got a bunch of these pieces already cut and routed out, so I'm just now fitting them individually to account for those diagonals. All right, it's pretty obvious from the trees growing on the leaves growing on the trees that it's been a little bit of time since I last checked in. I'm just doing the last part of this fence, which is really pretty redundant from everything you've seen so far. So I'm just kind of filling in these panels. I've got 4 more to go to close it out and tie this up. And the only real difference now is that when I go get materials, I'm able to say exactly how many more bolts or how much more hog fencing or wood do I need to close it out and try to come out with not a whole lot of leftovers. So I'm sort of finishing up all the remainders, plow through these. I've got a couple more details I'll show you a video of where I'm putting in like latches for both keeping the gate open and also for locking it or closing it and keeping it latched closed. But mostly this part is just redundant of everything I've done. So I'm gonna go through and finish this up without videoing, and I'll catch up with you when I'm done with this. All right, for this sort of kickstand, I put together a couple pieces here. I've got a piece that's gonna act as like the brake, and it's gonna sit out in front and hold it in place. And then it flips up. When it flips up, I can kick that thing down. So it'll be like a little kickstand. And I've got a bracket to put it on. So I'll throw this together and put it in place. So it's been a few weeks since I last videoed this fence project, and just kind of wrapping some things up. I've got one more thing to do, which is to put in a latch here that when the rolling gate is completely closed, it'll latch just so that it's not as easily opened. It's not meant to be super secure, but it'll just deter somebody from just opening it accidentally or just checking it. You can see the trees are growing. That's kind of refreshing to see them with leaves on them. This is keeping the deer out, and the gate has been pretty easy to use. We'll see how it weathers. The wood's going to turn gray. It's going to kind of wear in and rust a little bit on purpose, and so far it's been working really well. So kind of a little bit of an update since we've been using it now for a few weeks. We'll get this one more piece put in, and that'll wrap up this video. All right, for this latch, I've got a couple sleeved holes here that I welded in when I had the fence out, and I'm going to try to make some sort of stop that'll bump in against up here so the fence won't go through the rollers. And then I'll want to have it catch on top of this hoop on top, just as a way to latch the fence closed. So you'll actually operate the latch from back here, not from the far side where you might intuitively do it. And there's a spot on this far side where you can lock the gate if we ever need to do that. All right, so this is what I came up with. I got the plate to bolt onto the fence. It stood off so that I can accommodate this bump stop I put in here. And then when the gate comes in, it'll push this latch up and drop down. And then because it's up high, I've got a little rope to release the latch. And we'll see it works. I tacked it up and put it up there, and it seems like it's going to work. I'll go bolt it in and see. And that'll just give us a latch to hold the gate closed. It's not super secure, but it'd be at least confusing to somebody that's trying to just break in. All right, with that latch, that wraps up the rolling gate video, which is point 9. I started with point 1 and I went through point 9. All of those videos are me trying to learn the equipment. And the equipment I'm using right now is just a tripod, an iPhone, a 10-year-old Mac computer, and DaVinci Resolve, which is freely available on the internet. And I'm working with those tools, learning how to use them. I hope to improve that tool set, but also my skills. I'm also trying to get more comfortable being on camera. I'm not used to this, so it's new for me. I really appreciate everybody who's subscribed, who's liked, and who has made comments on the comment section, because that's helpful for me to get that feedback. So with these point releases out of the way, I'm going to start with the next one I do will be a 1.0. I've got some really exciting projects coming down the pipe. I've got one that I really want to announce, but I want to wait till that's final, and I will show that in the 1.0 video that I'll do. I'm trying to do videos based on projects, not based on a calendar. So some of these projects are going to take me a long time. I have a busy circumstance. I coach cross country in high school, and so, or a high school team. And so there'll be periods when I'm busy working with the team, and then there are busy off-season periods where I can do more video work. So it'll come and go, but if you subscribe, you'll be able to catch the videos as I put them out. And I will also do some how-tos along the way when I see things that I don't think are very well described in other videos when I'm looking for information for things I'm doing. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching. Looking forward to doing the 1.0 release and to hopefully improving my skills with doing these videos. So thanks for watching.